Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Six-Sided Podcast. I'm your host, the Taxman, and I know that this episode is late, and I said last week that I was going to try and get it on a better schedule, although with the news that had broke last night, which is not Impact Wrestling related, I'm glad now that I didn't record so I can record my review of Crossroads, as well as my thoughts on said issue. So once again, I'm your host, the Taxman, and I'm going to do this show a little bit differently. If you all are familiar with the format, usually I start off with the shoutouts, I give my 4 thoughts on Impact, I run down Impact, and we kind of put a bow on the show to end it all off. So this week I'm going to forego my 4 thoughts. I am going to give a quick shoutout, though, however, to our 2 new YouTube subscribers. That would be H. Cortez and Corwin Brown. Thank you both for subscribing. Again, if you subscribe to us on YouTube, I give you a shout out at the start of the show. It's honestly the least I can do. Keep subscribing, keep checking us out, keep giving us views. Honestly, everything, all the feedback, all the comments, all the back and forth has been really great, especially last week. I know the Sami Callihan spot in particular was a sore spot for some. I'm glad we were able to have civil conversations about it all, and that's what this whole thing is supposed to be about. So kudos to everyone for hopping on that. Thanks for giving us a ton of play. And yeah, I'm just going to give a quick shout out as well to our Twitter page. That's at 6_podcast. We've had a ton of new followers on there. And again, tons of interaction with everybody. Especially want to give a shout out to Cody versus Everyone and Audibus Maximus, and actually the Zach Martin as well. You three have been on fire this past few days, and it's been a treat to read your guys' stuff. So kudos to you three. Again, check us out on Twitter at 6_podcast, and don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com. Use the wonderful search bar, type in Six-Sided Podcast. Give us a subscribe, we give you the shout out. Like I said, I'm just going to go into reviewing Impact, and I'm going to end the show with my thoughts on said large issue from a different wrestling company. So we kick Crossroads off tonight with our first match, and that would be a tag title match, LAX, the champs, versus Cult of Lee. That's Caleb Conley and Trevor Lee. I thought that this match actually had a ton of energy to start the show off. The first, I would say, third of the match probably spent outside the ring. These two teams are beating the hell out of each other. It makes sense to start the match off like this. There's been a ton of heat between them. We've seen Cult of Lee teasing them, degrading the flag, down-talking them. LAX got a bit of a comeuppance last week, and in that vignette by the poolside. Thought that this was just a smart way to start the match off. Ton of heat. The best parts of this match were all done in the ring, for the most part, and I'll get into that for a second. So we see some great action here. Some real stiff shots being delivered by Santana and Ortiz. Cult of Lee is answering back. They're doing the double forearms. They're front kicking each other. Like, it was a heck of a match. I don't know if you guys thought this, but I thought that Santana was the star in this match. He did an incredible springboard moonsault. He had the crazy suicide dive over the top rope, was incredible. And for a guy of his height and stature, the fact that he cleared the rope, man, that guy has hops. And I didn't realize it until this match. Was super fun. Like I said, hard hitting. Nice little schmoz at the end. But we end up having LAX hitting the street sweeper on Caleb Conley to seal the deal and retain as Impact Tag Team Champions. In our next match, we honestly had a treat in a double championship match. Grand Champion Matt Sydal versus X Division Champ Taja Ishimori. And this match, like, for a couple of high flyers, was quite psychological actually, and it was nice to see. You got to see a lot of Matt Sydal working over the leg of Ishimori. He did a pretty good job of selling it. There was a few times where you could tell he kind of got caught up in the moment and maybe forgot that, hey, my legs kind of should be half broken or half falling off at this point with the amount of punishment he was taking. So that was good. You had Ishimori targeting the face of Matt Sydal. I thought that Sanjay Dutt and Josh Matthews did a really good job of explaining the backstory of why Matt Sydal's jaw was so injured. That just set it up. Again, both guys sold really well. Most of the action was contained in the ring, which, like, for two high flyers, I kind of like to see more. It's easy, like, for anybody to go outside the ring because you can use the apron, you can be innovative that way, you can run around the ring using the guardrails and such. I think it takes a lot more, shall we say, talent and we'll say expertise to pull off a match like these two pulled off tonight and keep it confined for the most part in the ring. We did have a nice golden moonsault, however, on the outside that Taja Ishimori delivered on Matt Sydal, and then he followed that up with the running Rana on the ramp. So I thought that was a pretty cool spot in itself, and there's Matt Sydal just selling his back on that one too, which was tremendous. So this match honestly had a little bit of everything. You had the wrist lock reversals, you had a lot of the mat work, you had the Japanese style, and you had a lot of the North American style beatings in the corner, submission type maneuvers. Again, Matt Sydal targeting a leg, picking his spot, and the finish I thought to this match was tremendous. So you had Matt Sydal miss the shooting star press and he eats the tombstone knees. Then you have Ishimori try and hit the 540 and he eats knees, and then you have a back and forth, and finally we have Matt Sydal winning the match with, again, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again, the nicest shooting star press in professional wrestling today. Just so crisp, the height's incredible. He nails it tonight and nails the 1-2-3 to become dual champion. So we have him holding the Grand Championship as well as the X Division Championship. So I'm assuming that now they're just going to amalgamate those titles, which is nice because I hope that we are finally done with the, we'll say, not so thought of highly Grand Championship title. So keeping in line with championships being on the line, our next match is for the Knockouts Championship, and we have Laurel Von Ness defending against Allie. I thought these two women worked a hell of a match, actually. This is by far the best I've ever seen Allie work in the ring. Nice little schmoz on the outside to start the match. Yeah, I'm not sure if it was all the selling that Laurel did, and she did a tremendous job of selling everything today, or the way that Allie was hitting it. Just, she looked, in my opinion, the best that she's ever looked. We ended up having Laurel Von Ness take control of the match and then hit a crazy unprettier outside the ring, although we only got an 8 count from the ref as Allie makes it back into the ring. We have a lot of back and forth after a nice little beating, if you will, with Laurel Von Ness giving it to Allie in the corner. Yeah, I just thought this was a hell of a match. Allie hits the Alley Valley Driver and then hits a hell of a super kick. And again, I can't stress this enough. This is the best that I've ever seen Allie work in the ring. And the super kick to finish was perfect. Honestly, if you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. It looks like she took her damn head off. And gets the 1-2-3. And we have a new Knockouts champion and Allie. And deservedly so. Again, these two women worked a hell of a match. Everything looked stiff. It looked crisp. Instead of looking like a bunch of cooperation, it looked like a fight. Like they hated each other. There was boots, there was punches, there was kicks. It was ugly. It was fantastic. It was exactly what it needed to be. And Allie, kudos to you, new Knockouts champion. Now, after a little break in the action, we get the not-so tag team match anymore. Was supposed to be Eddie Edwards and Lashley versus OVE, the Chris brothers. Instead, we have a handicap match, or so it seems, of the Chris brothers versus Bobby Lashley. I was talking about this last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Just watching the Chris brothers work, as a team, they work so well. And OVE as a unit, these guys just look like a pack of rabid dogs. The way that they attack, the way that they isolate, there's always one running interference with the ref, and the other two are just getting away with murder. Honestly, as a heel group and as a heel team, these guys are what's been missing in wrestling for a long time. The way they generate heat, the way that they do the 2-on-1s, 3-on-1s, they don't give a shit about the rules. They're choking Lashley in the middle of the ring with his own sweater. We have Sami Callihan on the outside using the bat on Lashley whenever the ref's not looking. The Chris brothers are doing blind tags. They're double teaming. They're throwing all the stops they can into this match. And to his credit, Lashley is standing his ground. He is just overwhelmed and he's taking a beating when out from nowhere comes Brian Cage. And if you haven't, like, I know I've said this before already tonight about the alley match and Santana in the tag match, but my God, watch Brian Cage when he comes into this match. He absolutely annihilates everybody. Even Lashley's in the corner, and he cannot believe what he's seeing. Towards the end of it all, we have Brian Cage. He has one of the Chris brothers up on his shoulders. Sami Callihan rolls in the ring with the bat, and Lashley spears the hell out of him. Takes them both out, and Brian Cage hits the drill claw on Jake Chris. Jesus Christ. Like, you have to see this move. If you haven't seen it, you are missing out. It looks like he murders the guy. Like, it's one of the... This guy is one of the most impressive wrestlers I've seen in a long time. And part of it is how they've booked him, which has been spot on, I must say. And part of it is just the way he's presented. The guy comes out as the Machine. This dude is a machine. It's incredible. So he gets the 3 count. You have the impromptu team of Brian Cage and Lashley defeating OVE. And again, I cannot put this over enough. Watch him deliver this drill claw. Oh, it's honestly a thing of beauty. I cannot stress it enough. You gotta see it. Now finally we have our main event of the evening. It's the Impact World Championship title on the line. We have the champ Austin Aries defending against Johnny Impact. I thought this was a hell of a match, actually. You had Johnny Impact trying to push the pace throughout the match, and you have that countered and juxtaposed against Austin Aries really calculating all of his spots, if you will. Everything he did was done with a purpose. It was all measured. He took his time. Just a clash of styles, if you will, but in a way that worked really well and really told a story in the ring. And I'll be honest, both of these guys look like they wanted it. It looked like an impressive, I'm going to one-up you, no, I'm going to one-up you. You had Impact just delivering devastating, high-intensity, high-risk maneuvers. There's one spot he goes for something off the top rope, and you had Austin Aries sweep his legs out, and he takes an ugly, ugly bump from the top of the ring post to the outside. And following that up, Austin Aries comes off the top to the outside with just a nice axe handle smash. These guys pulled out all the stops to make this championship match feel like a championship match. And honestly, when you watch sometimes titles on the line, it doesn't feel like either guy really wants it. Tonight it felt like both of these guys really, really did want it. A lot of back and forth. Johnny Impact trying to push the pace. Fast forwarding to the finish of the match, we had Johnny Impact attempt Starship Pain. Aries just barely manages to get out of the way. And then we have Austin Aries smash a beautiful drop kick in the corner on Johnny Impact. And then get him up for the Brainbuster, which is pretty impressive considering how much taller and heavier as well Johnny Impact is than Austin Aries. But again, he gets him up for the Brainbuster. It's a beautiful finish. And again, a finish is a finish. And we have Austin Aries retaining the Impact World Championship over Johnny Impact in a hell of a match. Way to end the show. A title that means something with two guys that want it. You cannot write better matches, you cannot book a better match, and you cannot write better television than that. And kudos to everybody for putting this card together. Honestly, this entire Crossroads show in itself was really, really well done. This is the best and most complete Impact Wrestling show that I've seen in 5 or 6 years. Really well done. Kudos to the booking. Kudos to all the talents who worked their ass off tonight. Again, super impressed. This was the best show. I might actually just watch this show again right after we're done recording here. Really, really well done. Hats off to everybody involved. Now, after the high of that Impact Wrestling show, I'm going to get into a real low, and I'm going to be talking about this fabulous Moolah Battle Royal that they're going to be bringing into WrestleMania this year with the WWE. What the hell? Honestly, when I saw this, I thought it was a rib on Twitter, legitimately. There is no way in hell that a person, and I can't even call her a woman, she is by gender, she is not by the way that she carried herself or acted. There is no way that a person like this should ever be memorialized, immortalized, or canonized like this. This is an absolute travesty. For those who don't know who Fabulous Moolah is, or why I'm so hot about this, Fabulous Moolah was quote-unquote a booker for women's wrestling in the 70s and 80s. And I use that term quite loosely because she wasn't a booker. She was essentially running a brothel house. Her quote-unquote female wrestlers under contract, she had such a stranglehold on the women's professional wrestling business in the Northeast that all the promoters worked with her. That means if you were a woman or you were a woman who wanted to be a professional wrestler, guess what? You went through Moolah. And if you went through Moolah, you went through hell. She essentially ran a drug-dealing prostitution ring masquerading as a professional wrestling academy. And by the way, she never actually trained any of the female wrestlers under her so-called tutelage. She had other women that she had beaten into submission doing it for her, who also, by the way, were not paid for any of their services by Moolah. So there are several prime examples of women who were emotionally, physically, sexually abused by Moolah and her husband, as well as basically made to be drug addicts to quote-unquote work for Moolah. So there's names, and you can throw this in your Google machine. This is all documented fact. This isn't opinion. This isn't somebody standing up on their soapbox. This is absolute fact. Throw in your Google machine, look up Wendy Richer, look up Winona Littleheart, Joyce Gable, Sweet Georgia Brown, whose real name was Susie Mae McCoy. She's actually the worst example of all this. And even if you want to go into quote-unquote modern-day wrestling in the 90s, look at what she did to Luna Vachon. She basically sent her out underage to a pedophile to be photographed and then sent back to her. Just the things that she did was sickening, degrading, vile, and repulsive. And this is an individual that you are going to now sweep all of the seediness under the rug to push your women's revolution narrative. You couldn't have picked a more deserving person. You're telling me that in your entire roster of women's wrestlers that you've had over the years, this is your shining example of a champion of women's rights? You have got to be kidding me. And this isn't the first time that WWE has revised their own history to fit whatever narrative that they're trying to push at the time. At this time, it's women's wrestling. Before, when they were pushing the Intercontinental Champion narrative, who is the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, and the first one they ever had was Pat Patterson. So they celebrated the life and times of Pat Patterson, how he was the first openly gay wrestler in professional wrestling history, yada yada yada. What they swept under the rug were the allegations of sexual misconduct towards underage boys that were filed against the WWF at the time in the early 90s. They gloss over the fact about how many wrestlers came forward saying that he essentially wanted them to exchange sexual services for bookings. All of this stuff is swept under the rug conveniently to push the narrative that Pat Patterson is the most brilliant booker that they've ever had, or the best and most recognized Intercontinental Champion they've ever had. It's a sham. I'll give you another prime example. A few years back when the WWE was starting out the network, they were looking to purchase the rights of the Puerto Rican territory tapes. Well, those tapes were owned by Carlos Colon's family. Now, Carlos Colon, you may not recognize in WWE history for the simple fact that he never once competed in a WWE ring. He had nothing to do with their history, but they put him in the Hall of Fame because they wanted the rights to the Puerto Rican territory tapes. What you may not know is that he facilitated, covered up, and buried the fact that one of his wrestlers under contract brutally murdered Bruiser Brody at one of his events. You never hear about that. This guy paid off the police, swept it under the rug, basically killed the entire investigation, tainted the investigation, paid off witnesses to not testify. You name it, this guy did it. That's how much influence he had in Puerto Rico and that territory at the time, where a wrestler under contract, where one of his wrestlers, Jose Gonzalez, murdered, do you understand? Murdered Bruiser Brody in the showers. He stabbed him in the showers at an event. And it was an hour until an ambulance was called. And it was an hour past that they were actually able to give him any sort of treatment because of, again, interference ran by Colon. He facilitated this entire thing. You'll never hear about this, though, in WWE's revised history. They'll tell you that he is the most celebrated wrestler, promoter, or character out of Puerto Rico. And just to show you how hypocritical the whole WWE revised history, and again, you can go into the Hall of Fame part of it is, there's a ton of examples, but I'm going to stick with one fourth one because I think that this best illustrates just the absolute nonsense that exists in WWE. So, does everybody remember Chyna, who will never get in the Hall of Fame? Mark my words, she will never, ever get in the Hall of Fame because she did porn and she had a drug problem. Essentially is what it boils down to. Now, correct, she did porn, which is perfectly legal to do. As seedy as it is, and as maybe it's looked down upon by others, it's a form of work, it's legal work, she did it. Whatever with that part of it. Don't even get me started about her using drugs. How many guys are currently in the Hall of Fame, and there's one going in this year, that have been through rehab multiple times, and you know they're going to be headed back there again. I don't even need to mention their names. You know exactly who they are. So what kind of a shit double standard is that? You have arguably one of the most important women in wrestling history. And by the way, you could have called the goddamn Battle Royal the Chyna Battle Royal, and it would have got way less heat than this godforsaken Moolah Battle Royal that you've decided to name this travesty. You should have called it the Chyna one. She should be in the Hall of Fame. You're keeping her out when she is the biggest women's wrestling star that your company ever made and ever produced. She is still, and probably forever will be, the only woman to ever hold the men's Intercontinental Champion. And she doesn't deserve to be in your Hall of Fame because she made some poor personal choices? Really? Poor personal choices is what dictates if you make the Hall of Fame or not. So if she's not in, then why is somebody like Sunny? I'm sure you can draw your own conclusions why she is still in there, but let's face it, Sunny did porn. Sunny still has drug problems. I believe she was just arrested again for disorderly conduct, so she's been in way more police, legal, and drug problems than Chyna ever was. Rest in peace, Chyna, by the way. Not only that, She is the only WWE Hall of Famer to ever try and sell their Hall of Fame ring on eBay. Let that sink in for a second. She tried to sell her Hall of Fame ring on eBay. She's still in the goddamn Hall of Fame, and she is still celebrated as the original diva. Obviously, you people understand why that is. I don't need to get into that. But it just further shows the absolute ridiculous sham and history revising that WWE has done, and continue to do. So, before everybody starts celebrating people like this, a couple of people that are going into the Hall of Fame this year who shouldn't, there is no goddamn way they should be going in. Before these type of people are vilified, celebrated, and otherwise looked upon with genuine favor, perhaps it's time for the real stories to be coming out about things like this. There's a classic line that I've heard in wrestling many times. There is something way more powerful than any chokeslam, any powerbomb, any clothesline, and any maneuver in the wrestling ring. And that thing is an eraser. And that statement has never been more true today than it's ever been. WWE, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Whew. So now that I'm done spewing vitriol tonight, I am going to put a bow on this week's episode. So again, thank you everybody for checking us out on YouTube. Again, youtube.com. Use the wonderful search bar. Find us Six Sided Podcast. Get us those views. Subscribe to us. Leave us some comments. Give us some likes. Everything's very much appreciated. You can find us on SoundCloud at www.soundcloud.com/sixsidedpodcast. I am still working on getting us on iTunes. Again, I've just not had a lot of time recently, as you can imagine, with the new house situation, new baby, yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to go into it all, but I am working hard on all that, so please bear with me. So again, I will say it because somebody eventually is going to take me up on my offer. If you want to be on the show, if you want to be a part of the show, if you want to review segments of Impact on the show, if you got 4 thoughts for the show, hit me up on Twitter at 6_podcast, or shoot me an email, sixsidepod@gmail.com. Again, with both of those, there are no numbers or gimmicks, just letters. So drop us a line. Let us know what you think. Give us your comments, your constructive criticisms. Give us your praise. Hey, tell us we're awesome, or tell us we suck, but tell us why we suck if you're going to do that, at least. Again, at 6_podcast. Again, find us on YouTube. Subscribe to us. If you do that, next week you'll be hearing your name at the beginning of the show when we put you over for subscribing to us on YouTube. So before I get out of here for the night, this is the Taxman saying, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night, everyone, and here comes spring.